There's a line in the film, The Big Short, that I love, which is, "Truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate poetry." After the film, thinking about why poetry gets so little love and so much hate, I Googled most popular American poem and found The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I had memorized the poem in grade school and remembered reciting, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." Which seems nice, and yellow wood is kind of pretty, so fine, it seems totally fine. But why do Americans love this totally fine poem more than any other totally fine poem? So I thought maybe it has something to do with rugged individualism. You know, I'm no follower, I go my own dang American way, and good for me, I didn't take the stupid road. But then I decided to reread the poem and noticed a line I had forgotten. The two roads had been worn the same, so both that morning equally lay. Both that morning equally lay. So it wasn't actually the road less traveled by. The two roads were identical. The narrator is deceiving himself at a later point in time, seeing agency in retrospect where there was none in actuality. So he's the old guy wagging his finger saying, "And that's why I took the road less traveled by. I was the one guy who joined the Navy, except for all those other guys in the Navy." But it turns out that it's the incorrect reading that's responsible for catapulting The Road Not Taken to number one, because most people fucking hate poetry. And I'm thinking maybe it's because true things are uncomfortable. The most truthful person I know is a 50-year-old autistic woman named Franny Greer. My husband Jim and I befriended Franny and her mother 8 years ago when they were living on the streets. Her mother passed away last year, but we continue to in various ways help Franny, a little financially, but mainly by driving her to various social services while incessantly playing her favorite song, Dancing Queen, a song she's heard 1,000 times and almost knows all the lyrics to. Little complicating tidbit about Franny. Franny is in love with my husband and would be thrilled to find out I was dead. I get this sense when Franny says things like, "I know Jim married you, Maggie, but things could have been different. It could have been me with handsome Jim on Easy Street, and anything could happen on Easy Street, Maggie." Yeah. So this right here is a drawing that Franny made for Jim. It may be hard to see, but it's actually a dog made completely out of penises. So it's got a penis tail and a penis face and penis paws. So to Jim, she gives a penis picture, and to me, she gives a look that says, "I wish I could make you disappear by narrowing my eyes until you got smaller and smaller and then we're completely fucking gone." So the question you might be asking is why? Why help this woman who has overt designs on my husband and would be happy if my life were to be untimely snuffed out? And you might be thinking I would be well poised to answer this question, that I would be especially privy to my own motivations, but not true. There are plenty of things that I do that I find utterly baffling. Like when Jim and I are talking and he hesitates for what I think is an excessive period of time. If he says, so maybe, I will insert Maggie, as if he's forgotten my name. This joke of inserting Maggie has not made Jim laugh or express even the slightest hint of amusement since 1997. Yet, I continue to add Maggie when he hesitates approximately twice a week, which would mean I've made this dizzyingly lame witticism without any sort of encouragement over 1,000 times, and I honestly couldn't tell you why. And I honestly couldn't tell you why I help out Franny Greer, although I did come up with a list of possible motivations. Number one, genuine human empathy. I am sure simple compassion enters into the equation to some degree, but I suspect in the pie chart of motivations, it's a rather measly piece. A piece of pie perhaps suited for an elderly diabetic lady on her birthday. Number two, and this, I suspect, is a rather big slice of the pie. A slice for a plump, pie-happy couple. The action of caring allows me to sculpt my self-image in a way that I find flattering. I am able to upgrade my personal avatar, my existential Bitmoji, to something I'm more pleased with. So when I'm helping Franny, my Bitmoji grows wide, compassionate eyes, and her hands reach out like a dedicated neonatal nurse to a crack baby or Bono to a fan. Now, of course, as soon as I recognize I'm helping Franny as a way to enhance my self-image, the makeover process is thwarted and the self-loathing process begins. Number 3, I am surprisingly comfortable around Franny. Now, there certainly are elements of Franny's company I find not so comfortable, like when she tells me, I still get my period, and I bleed hard, Maggie, I bleed hard. Sometimes it goes all the way through, all the way to the back of my pants, to the butt, all the way to the butt, Maggie. Which is an intimidatingly strong flow that I'm not even gonna try to compete with here tonight. Or, like when Franny cries, which is often, tears and mucus from her nose run down unimpeded to her mouth, puddling on her lips, combining with her saliva to form a concoction, which, as she speaks, is sprayed into my own very private mouth. In these moments, it occurs to me that if Franny were an infant, especially my infant, I would not be grossed out. An innate biological drive to care for an adorable, small, helpless being would kick in, making the transfer of fluids tolerable, if not delightful. A thought like this loops me back to motivation number 2, self-perception upgrade, helping me form a cartoonish image of a woman who endures the assault of alien bodily fluids despite the absence of a compensatory maternal drive. My Bitmoji throws up her arms and cheers to no one in particular, how do you like me now? Number 4, I find Franny's unfiltered honesty fascinating and often poetic. Once she said in a way that broke my heart, she said, there are things that nobody in the world except me and my mother know, like how when my mother was pregnant with me, it was a hard birth, and her cousin Alvaro was there, and Alvaro knew important actor Lorenzo Lamas, who is very handsome, but not as handsome as Handsome Jim. Only my mother knew about the hard birth and about important Lorenzo Lamas, Maggie, and now it's just me that knows. I mean, it's only me, Maggie. Yeah. But then she'll say, you may think you live on easy street, Maggie, because you made good decisions, but if your parents didn't educate you beyond 5th grade, you wouldn't have been able to write anything, and you wouldn't have married Jim if you didn't look like Katherine Heigl. Like Katherine Heigl, but not as pretty. Not as pretty. Ask anyone, Maggie. Yeah. What Franny is saying, aside from the Katherine Heigl slight, which I barely noticed and totally doesn't get under my skin, no need to compare, is that I am a product of a variety of forces that I want to take personal credit for. An idea which threatens the self-image I've so painstakingly constructed. Like the Road Not Taken poem, Franny is pointing out my tendency to believe, well, I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Like most people in our culture, I am privileging the narrative of agency over the narrative of fortune. And I think that privileging actually creates a lot of unnecessary pressure. I mean, what a relief it would be to give up my preoccupation with how well I am doing. I have slavishly dedicated myself to the construction of an image that nobody sees but me. Nobody but me is pondering the question, how does Maggie Rowe stack up against others as an overall human being? Especially in comparison to other 42-year-old tall, artificially blonde women in the arts and entertainment industry. How is Maggie Rowe compensating for her decision to not have a child? Is what she is doing instead enough to justify that decision? What is she doing instead? And why can't she be better at it? What is keeping her from getting a better overall existence score in comparison to an arbitrary sampling of other human beings? And why can't she catch up to Katherine Heigl? This joyless psychic activity has sucked up more of my energy than perhaps any other life endeavor. Yet, it is of no interest to anyone but me, and it makes me feel really bad. starring in a shitty movie only I can get on VOD and then streaming it over and over and over and over and over. And I wonder if that energy might be better spent. Like Franny says, it's not your fault that you live on Easy Street, but it's not my fault I don't. So everybody should just stop thinking about good or bad, good or bad, good or bad all the time. We talked about this at H&R Block, Maggie. I may be incompetent, but according to California, but there's one thing that I know, and this is true, which I think is true and very poetic, and I like it. But then Franny will say things like, Katherine Heigl is going to get old, you know. And then she won't be pretty anymore. And you're going to get old too. And you'll be even less pretty than Katherine Heigl because you were less pretty to begin with. And that's the truth, Maggie. That's the truth. And then I think, I fucking hate poetry.